73 degrees, 7 o'clock.
Join us now for Dinner at the Adams. Tonight you've a dinner date with Cedric Adams and Mrs. Adams out at Cedric's own home. Your hosts are Cedric himself, Mrs. Adams, and Griggs Cooper and Company of St. Paul, makers of Minuet crackers and cookies, home brand food products, and sweetest made candies. Naturally, many of these fine quality Griggs Cooper products appear on the Adams dinner table this evening. Now let's join the Adams and their special guests by transcription around the table. Cedric, are you ready?
Ready we are, and good evening. You know, I've always loved the working girl. She makes a very valuable contribution to the everyday existence of all of us. Tonight, the dinner guests are 8 working girls and their boss. And they're all from one place, the Northwestern Bell Telephone Company here in Minneapolis. Occasionally, we forget to remember what an important role the telephone plays. Business across the country would probably be almost at a standstill were it not for the convenience of the telephone. If you've been without telephone service in your home for as little as half a day, you know how lonesome and dull life can really get. Well, I thought it'd be kind of fun to entertain these young ladies from the telephone company tonight, listen to their point of view, perhaps learn something about their work, and also have them discuss some of the problems submitted for our regular Friday night after dinner session. So let's say hello to the Hello Girls. At my left is
Mary Murphy,
How long have you been with the company, Mary?
31 years.
Do you remember what your first job was?
Yes, I do, Cedric. I was an operator at the Highland Exchange.
And what do you do now?
I'm a PBX and teletypewriter instructor.
Still single?
Oh, not my fault, dear.
Next is,
Frances Knight.
describe your job for us briefly, Francis.
Well, I'm one of the 4 girls that answer on the official PBX board of our company.
And PBX means what?
Private Branch Exchange.
That's when we call Main 4112, we get you or one of the other 3
Yes,
girls.
you do, Cedric.
How many years of service do you have?
I have 39.
Isn't that an amazing record? Minneapolis, your hometown, Francis?
That's right.
Our next guest is a long-distance operator.
Wilma Carlson.
How long a training period do you girls have, Wilma?
Well, the initial training period is 4 weeks.
And how many years of service?
5.
Are there particular voice requirements for your work?
An operator has to have a pleasing type of voice, yes.
If you had your department to pick, would you pick long distance?
I would.
Married or single, Wilma?
Single.
And here's a young lady that I visit with every morning on the teletype.
Mrs. Ruth Claron.
That's Ruthie, is that right?
That's right.
How long have you been married, Ruthie?
Just a little over a year.
Do you find it difficult to mix the 2 careers?
Not too often, no.
No children yet.
No.
That may happen when the children come. Our next guest is one of the girls who looks up numbers for us. She's known as the information operator.
Mrs. Harold Hanson.
And where are you from, Grace?
Decorah, Iowa.
And how long have you been in the Twin Cities?
Almost 2 years.
How long have you been in telephone work altogether?
4 years.
And our next guest is what they call a service representative, and her name is...
Marilyn Humm.
And what are your duties, Marilyn?
Well, as a service representative, we take the orders for new installations of service, for additional service. We explain bills to the customer and help him with any problems he may have concerning his service.
Don't these girls have marvelous voices? You can tell they've been trained. Married or single, are you, Marilyn?
Single.
And how long have you been with the telephone company?
Almost 4 years now.
Our next guest is...
Margaret McVoy.
And what is your title, Margaret?
I'm a cashier.
How many people pay their bills every day down there?
On an average of 1,600.
And how many girls are there taking care of those?
There are 7 regular cashiers and 2 extras.
That keeps you busy all day, doesn't it?
Indeed it does.
Do you enjoy dealing with the public?
Very much.
They're nice folks, aren't they?
Best in the world.
How many years have you had with the telephone
I've
company?
had 6 years.
And here's the young lady we get when we call for telephone repair service.
Coreen Pasket.
And where are you from, Coreen?
Minneapolis.
Still single?
Yes.
And how many years with the telephone company?
16 and a half.
And now comes the boss of all of these girls, and many, many more.
Harold Peaker.
And how many girls do you have working for you altogether, Harold?
Well, about 2,000 in Minneapolis.
Do you ever get tired of women?
Never.
It's a nice attitude. What is your official title?
District manager.
And what was your first job with the telephone company?
Well, Cedric, I guess you'd call it a counter jumper in Omaha.
And then you spent some time in Duluth?
Yes, I was district manager in Duluth about 4.5 years.
And how long have you been at the Minneapolis?
About 10 months.
Then we have our two regulars.
Bob Sutton with a question.
What is it, Robert?
Cedric, when you dial a number the wrong way, which one of these girls sits there by the phone and says, ooh, ooh?
I think it's Francis. And our last regular.
Nancy Adams.
Do you have a question like that, Mom?
No question.
All right. Well, remember now, the majority of tonight's dinner guests are working girls, so let's have at the mail to see how these minds function on the subject supplied by you listeners for tonight's informal treatment. Here we go. Mrs. C.L. of Jordan, Minnesota wants to know, how can a person deal with a bad-mannered smoker? I don't like cigarette or cigar smoke, and so many occasions are spoiled for me by people's rude smoking habits. I wonder if there's any way for me to be gracious but firm.
I will grant you that the most difficult part of cleaning up after entertaining is cleaning up a bunch of dirty ashtrays or sweeping ashes up off the floor, and I think that many smokers are very inconsiderate of their host and hostess and do go around dropping ashes where they shouldn't be, but I guess that's one of those things that we just have to learn to tolerate.
Well, I think some of the fault lies with the hostess herself in supplying little dinky ashtrays that fill up in with one or two flicks, and after that you've got a one that's either humped up, full of stuff. I believe that every home should have 15 or 20 big, commodious ashtrays. How big are yours, Mary?
Well, I would say they would hold a pint of ashes.
That's a pretty good sized ashtray then.
Oh, and I don't like them putting their ashes in with my plants or dumping them in the sink. I would just get the feeling when I find cigarette butts in the sink.
Well, do you prefer snooze chewers?
No, I don't.
Well, I would say that if a person thinks enough of one and invites them to their home, they should accept their fault. And if it makes them more comfortable and they enjoy smoking, why not have it? There's so few things in life that you get pleasure out of. Why not? Let them smoke.
Oh, I
That's
think
no
you're so
harm.
right,
Yeah.
Francis.
And if you expect to have friends, you've got to make them feel that they're welcome at your home. And if you're going to be nagging them with an ashtray, and don't do this and don't do that, and
Well, I never do that.
My woodwork is white, and my wallpaper is light, and my shades are light. Why, just take everything out of the room and then let them smoke, and when they leave, put it back in again. Now, there's a solution.
Mary, did you hear that?
Yeah, I heard her.
I never smoke in very far. I do my smoking first, and then I run over there.
That's inconsiderate, though.
Yeah, because I know she doesn't care about it.
What do you do, Mr. Peeker, at your house?
Well, Mary, I guess we just permit people to enjoy themselves, and our philosophy, I guess, is one of permitting people to get the most out of life, and if that is their way, why, we attempt to clean up after them.
Let the ashes fall where they may, huh?
Well, we've had 2 bad fires in the apartment building that I live in caused by cigarette smoking.
Yes, but both times the lady was intoxicated, didn't know what she was doing, so you can't blame that on other people. I was in our building, and I'm a little nervous.
Well, you see how simple it is to win one of our awards for that problem. From Mrs. C.L. of Jordan, Minnesota, we're going to give her an ample supply of Thin-Wet crackers, home-brand strawberry preserves, home-brand coffee, sweetest made mints, home-brand olives, and so on. Thank you very much, Mrs. C.L. Well, tonight we have expected guests, but what do you do when unexpected guests drop in? Are you a little baffled occasionally at not having something ready to serve? Well, we have a little suggestion. You just keep a box of Thin-Wet saltine crackers on hand, and your guests will love them, believe me. Thin-Wets are those crisp, thin saltines by Minuet. They're tender, crisp, full of flavor, with just the right accent of fine topping salt. Serve them with sparkling beverages, with sharp cheese or ice-cold milk, with fruit or vegetable juices. And then, for a special treat, sometime you try Thin-Wets with ice cream. Ah, there's nothing better than that. Thin-Wets are extra thin, so So thin, as a matter of fact, that you get 20% more crackers in a Thinuette box than in the same size box of ordinary soda crackers. And here's another advantage. Thinuettes are double fresh, and that freshness is baked in air-conditioned ovens and then sealed in with airtight cellophane both inside and out. Now, if your grocer doesn't have Thinuette saltine crackers, you just drop me a postcard with his name and address, and I'll see to it that he gets some for you. Look for Thinuettes in the bright blue and yellow package with a picture of the minuet dancers. Mrs. H.A. of Sauk Rapids wants to know, is it improper for a middle-aged widow to ask a gentleman friend for dinner to her home? Maybe we have some, shall we say, spinsters here tonight. Let's enlarge that to that group, shall we? Is it improper for a middle-aged widow or spinster to ask a gentleman friend for dinner to her home?
Well, no, I'd say that would be perfectly all right. In fact, I've done that very thing myself, and I'm sure that it was very proper all the way along, and I cooked a very good dinner, and I know they enjoyed it, and I did too.
Well, do you have any repercussions at all from neighbors or friends when you do invite a gentleman friend in?
No, I never do.
What do you do about your friends, Frances?
Mine? Oh, I just invite them in, and they seem to enjoy themselves. No one complains. Of course, it's hard nowadays, I'll admit.
Well, it's hard to find somebody to invite in, isn't it?
They're either too young or too old.
Well, now let's go on with this just a degree more to give this lady up there at Sauk Rapids a little comfort. Supposing that she and her gentleman friend have been out for an evening and they get home at 11:30. Do you think she should invite the gentleman in then? For a midnight snack, we'll say.
Well, I still think that would be all right if she'd like to...
Midnight snack or snack?
If she'd like to, say, like she'd want to make a cup of coffee and she has some homemade cookies or cake or something like that, I still think that's all right.
And I think if she wanted to snack him too, Mary, it better be done inside.
Well, I think if I were the young lady or the widow involved, I think I would also give him a good night's snack.
What's the age of discretion? At what age is this all right now?
Women never grow old, you know.
That's a nasty laugh. Well, apparently we're not after a complete solution, but Mrs. H.A. up there at Sauk Rapids, you've had the working girl's point of view on that, and we hope they've brought you some encouragement. One of our gift assortments of home brand products goes to you, and the next time he comes over, have him in at 11:30 and enjoy these home brand products with him. With the telephone such a handy little gadget and yet so far-reaching in its importance, I think maybe we ought to take a minute or two out of our after-dinner conversation to find out just a bit about the work these girls do. There are several questions that have popped into my mind which I'd like to have answered. So if the girls don't mind talking shop for a minute or two, let's consider the telephone. Who has the largest switchboard in the Twin Cities?
Well, that is really divided between the Dayton Company and the University of Minnesota. The Dayton Company has 15 positions, but the University of Minnesota has 1,500 stations, which is equivalent to a small town in Minnesota.
How many long-distance calls originate in Minneapolis every day?
We have an average of 29,400.
Do you ever listen in on any of them?
Privacy of communication is stressed from the time the operator is started in training.
You mean they start believing it after a while?
Believing it, we're sold on it.
Well, all that interesting stuff going on, don't you ever get a temptation to just drop the key just once?
We have a lot of work to do.
What's the biggest long-distance day? What's the toughest one? When do you have the most calls?
Well, weather has a lot to do with it. Any unusual event. Mother's Day was a big day. We had about 5,000 more calls than we have on an ordinary Sunday.
There must be a lot of listeners with sons in Korea. What's the cost of a call to Korea?
Well, at the present time, calls to Korea are restricted to United Nations, press, and government calls. The charge is $12 for 3 minutes plus the federal tax.
If I had a son over there now, couldn't I call him?
Not at the present time, no, they're restricted.
Are you taking calls to Japan now?
I believe we are to Japan, yes.
Do you get many long-distance calls from people who are slightly inebriated who want to talk to Stalin or Truman or MacArthur?
Yes, we do.
What do you do with those?
Well, we try to determine whether it's a call that they really want to place, if they're trying to play a joke. If it is, we accept the call and attempt to complete it.
Have you ever put one through to the Kremlin?
I haven't, no, but we have in our office.
How many people call information a day?
We have an average from 45, and we have had as high as 57,000 a day.
57,000?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it would be very nice if a lot of the people would look in their telephone directory rather than call information. Many of the calls that we have coming into information today are unnecessary.
I just found out that 63 out of 100 are listed in your directory.
That's right.
The calls that we get.
Mm-hmm.
How many books do you girls have to thumb through when we ask for a number down there?
We have one book. On one side we have the names, on the other side we have the addresses. And our classified section is the same as yours.
And then how do you keep track of the new phones and when they're new installations?
Well, that is put in every day in the middle of the book called the Daily Addendum.
What are the hardest names to look up, Grace?
Well, I think your more common names are harder because there are so many of the same names. You don't know which one is the one that they want.
What's our most common one here?
Johnson.
Johnson leads them all, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's true across the country. I think Smith is probably the most common name.
What's that?
Well, we probably have a large number of people waiting to get telephone service now. Maybe we can answer some queries about that. How far behind are the installations, Harold?
Well, Cedric, we have about 5,400 held applications in Minneapolis at the present time. However, we would like to say this, that we have connected many, many thousands in the past few years, but because of our inabilities to secure enough facilities, we are unable to take care of everyone who wants telephone service when and if they want it. We are short of central office equipment which provides the telephone numbers, and we are short of cable which provides the wires to connect telephones to the central office.
If you're on a party line, is it still very difficult to get off from a party line onto a private?
At the present time, Cedric, it really is, because we are trying to give everyone we possibly can some kind of telephone service, even though it's party line service, rather than to provide those folks that desire it individual line service.
You know, this might be a problem that we can solve for a lot of people here. I know a lot of sufferers on party lines where they don't get along too well with the people they're associated with on the party line. Do you girls have any relief for them or any suggestions?
Yes, we certainly do, Cedric. We'd like to have the party lines try and cooperate and work out their own problems themselves. We're more or less the middleman, and, well, it isn't a good idea to have a middleman step in any problem. You know the problem, your party knows the problem, which you have yourselves. And it certainly helps if the two of you can get on the line or go over in the back fence and talk it out.
Is there any way we can find out who the other party is on our party line?
Absolutely. You can call into the company or come in, and we're very glad to tell you who your party line is and in what the code number is, so that you may call them from your own home.
And then you suggest getting together with them and talking over your own party line problems, huh?
Absolutely. In the past, it's proved the very best solution to all the problems.
That's better than saying, "Oh, hang up, you old bag."
Definitely.
Hey, what about this toll dialing for long distance they're putting in?
Now, operators in Minneapolis are able to dial many points in the United States. We dial a number directly out of our office.
Bob, could I pick that one up for you just a bit? By the end of this year, there will be an experimental installation made at Englewood, New Jersey, in which the customers at Englewood, New Jersey will be able to dial all of their long-distance calls to 13 central points, such as Minneapolis, where we already have toll dial installations.
Can we dial automatically now on long-distance calls?
No, we can't. The call is completed by an operator.
What do you do with all the slugs you get out of the payphones?
We get a few slugs nowadays, but not very many. And those that we do get, probably most of the people will be happy to learn that we dispose of them by dumping them in the Mississippi River.
I think with all of you hello girls here, you don't mind being called that, do you? You're not really hello girls anymore, but it's the old term. What is the proper way for a business phone to be answered and a home phone?
Well, I would say the proper way to answer a business telephone is to immediately identify it by their firm name or number.
Well, what about answering at home now? How would you suggest I answer my phone here?
Well, to be honest with you, I think you ought to say, this is the Adams residence.
There's a phone right now.
Well, should I answer it for you? Properly, yes. Say good evening.
Mr. Adams, he ain't home.
That's pretty good. I'll try that. Well, you really think the formal approach then is the best, huh?
Well, yes, because now let's say a customer came into town and he wanted to call, and you take off your receiver and say hello. You still haven't identified your telephone. He's still going to say, is this Hopkins 6464? And you're going to say yes.
If you're over 58, come on up.
Down at the telephone company, I really take pride in how we all answer our telephone. Now, for instance, myself. When my extension telephone rings, I answer by saying, this is Miss Murphy speaking, and if I should be out of the office or in the training room, we have a very competent young lady answering our telephone, and she always says, Miss Murphy's telephone, Mrs. Hill speaking.
Mary, I think I would agree with you, but I think some of the terminology is important in that, and I might tell you that a number of years ago I used the same words that you used. I used to answer the telephone and say, this is Mr. Peaker speaking, until one day I answered the telephone and I said, this is Mr. Speaker speaking. From that day on, I say, this is Mr. Peaker talking.
Well, we hope that this little discussion about telephones and telephone service may bring a little enlightenment to you subscribers. And we hope, too, that this discussion has perhaps lightened the burden of these working girls at the telephone company. I wonder if you're old enough to remember when crackers were sold from the old cracker barrels. Well, I am, and if you are too, you'll recall how much thicker and how much heavier those old soda crackers used to be. The grocer would count only about 128 to the pound. Well, today, the newer Thinuette saltine crackers are much, much thinner. If you count the Thinuettes in a pound package, you'll find approximately 160. Well, that's 32 more crackers to the pound. These new Thinuette saltines stay fresh, crisp, and flaky, too, because they're so thin. And they're thin because they're made from a richer cracker dough. Thinuettes are always so crisp and fresh, right down to the very last one in the box. That's a far cry from the old Cracker Barrel days, when crackers used to be soggy and limp long before the last ones were sold. Well, Thinuettes have their freshness baked in and sealed in with cellophane wrappers inside and outside the package. So they're always deliciously crisp, thin, and double fresh. You try them tomorrow, will you? Ask for Thinuette saltine crackers at your favorite food store. Now let's go back to the mail. Miss M.B. of Minneapolis writes, do you agree with the generalization that men over 35 usually make poor husbands? That generalization is brand new to me, but maybe it's an old story. Who'd like to offer an opinion on that?
Well, I take that, Cedric, because after all, I'm quite a considerably amount over 35 years old. And he'd have to be along in his late 40s before I'd even consider him, or even in his early 50s.
Well, do you think a man of that age is too set in his habits for you to train him or bring him around to your way of thinking if necessary?
No, I would say so. I'm comparing a man 35 with my own age. I still say that I'm not set in my ways, and I'm thinking that The man wouldn't be set in his
Well,
ways.
don't you feel, speaking in generalities, that a woman over 35, somebody who's accustomed as you are to working, might find life a little dull just running a household?
Well, I sure could make life interesting if I found a household to run.
Miss Humm, what age do you think a husband, you're looking for one, are you?
Yes, that's right.
What
Sort
age
of.
would you prefer? Well, let's get your age first, Marilyn.
Well, my age is 25. And, well, I feel that a person, either a man or a woman, is best suited for marriage between the ages of 20 and 30. After the age of 30, I really do feel that you are set in your ways, and it is harder for you to find a mate, because after that age, both of you have your own ways of life.
Well, Ruth, you're married now. How old is your husband?
He's 26.
Grace, your husband is how old?
29.
What do you think is the best age?
Well, I think any age is all right.
That's a good one. Mary, now how about you?
My, with all these young girls giving their opinions about being too old after they get to be 30, looks like I just haven't got a chance, but I've seen some very attractive men over 40.
Margaret,
It depends on the personality, I think.
you're single.
Yes.
Would you consider marrying a widower?
Yes, I think so, if we were agreeable as far as interests were concerned.
And now, Frances, here's the young lady with 39 years, was it, Frances?
That's right.
What do you have to offer on
Well,
that?
I don't think age means a thing with a person. I think a person can be just as nice at 60 as they can at 20.
Well, now here's the boss. How old are you, Harold?
46.
What do you think the ideal age for marriage is?
Well, I think I would agree with the younger girls here in that the ideal age, insofar as I'm concerned, is in the 20s. But, of course, it depends quite a bit upon the individual and whether or not they have been married before and whether they can adjust themselves to working in the double harness.
Well, you've got quite a varied group of opinions here, Miss M.B., and we hope out of all of them that you found hope here in many of these older and younger ones, too. So you make your selection now, and for the question, of course, we're going to send you one of our customary awards, a gift assortment from the home brand folks. Well, here's a question you working girls I think you can toy with. If you had your choice, would you pick a man or a woman for a boss?
Well, Cedric, I have worked for both men and women, and I personally would select a man boss.
I think that the telephone business is kind of hard to understand. You know, it isn't like another business. You know, there's certain places for women, there's certain places for men. And in the traffic department, where I've always been, we've always had women. And they've been very grand to me and very lovely, and we get along just fine. We just really couldn't have, men walking up and down behind you, there would be no business there. The girls would be watching the man.
Well, do you think, for instance, now you've got a lot of supervisors down there, girls, do you think men would do a better job in that as bosses than...
No, not in that particular line of work, Cedric. I think that right in your central offices where we have operators, I think that no other person could handle that job as well as a woman. But there are certain jobs...
Tonight you've been a guest at Dinner at the Adams, a series of transcribed Friday evening broadcasts direct from Cedric's own home. By the way, the topics discussed by Cedric and his special guests are submitted by you listeners. And each week there's a handsome gift from Griggs Cooper and Company, the sponsors of Dinner at the Adams, for the person whose topic is selected. It's a generous gift box assortment of Griggs Cooper food products, minuet crackers and cookies, home brand olives, preserves, coffee, and other good things to eat. And to top it off, sweetest made candies, including those famous chocolate-covered mint creams. Do you have any special topic you'd like to hear the Adams dinner guests discuss on a future program? Just mail it in. It may win that big Griggs Cooper gift box. Send your suggestions to Dinner at the Adams, WCCO, Minneapolis. No coupon, no sales slip, no purchase of any kind is necessary. Tonight's guests at the Adams dinner table have been Mrs. Mary F. Murphy, Margaret McVoy, Frances Knight, Wilma Carlson, Ruth Claron, Grace Hanson, Marilyn Humm, Coreen Pasket, and Mr. Harold Peaker. Now we leave the Adams home, but we hope you'll be back with us next Friday at 7, when Cedric and Mrs. Adams and the Griggs Cooper Company are again your hosts for Dinner at the Adams.